Everard Junction. This video is a complete tour of the layout, which has been requested by a few of you. So I figured we'd start at the station because this is the most prominent area on the layout that you're fairly familiar with. Most of the trains are stored here. As you can see, we've got quite a few tracks. Got the outer line over there. The centre track occupies the two lines either side of this platform. As you can see, we've got one passenger train waiting on the middle line and the other one running through. It's the new Bachmann Class 37 in intercity livery. It's very nice. And then here we've got the branch line. This is quite useful that it has 3 tracks, so I can keep a DMU stored here or over there in the TMD, or I can have trains stored in the loop while other trains pass. So this 33 is sitting on the branch line. I'm still able to operate trains as they just loop around it. It's controlled by a three-way point there, and I've got another point over there. I'll come to that side in a minute. So we move down, come to the TMD, and this area is pretty good. I haven't worked over here for a while, but I will be coming back to it, adding an extra coat of paint onto the existing concrete and some colours and some fencing and, you know, long grass, usual detail and stuff. Maybe some lights as well. A good idea to get some lights. Done a bit of work on my Class 31. As you can see, this has been re-weathered. It was weathered originally, you may have noticed that it was only weathered with acrylic paints and brushes, and it looked okay, it wasn't too bad, but it still had the silver wheels, which I hate, and it still had various brush streaks and areas that I wasn't too happy with. So what I did was I went on the internet and had a look at a couple of pictures of Class 31s from the 1980s, particularly the late 80s, which is the era I'm modelling. And I noticed that a lot of Class 31s that were in British Rail blue, this colour, were later painted with an orange stripe that went around the roof. You can see I've painted that in and added it on. It was quite tricky, but small brush, a little bit of paint and some masking tape, and it came out pretty good. As you can see, this stripe was applied to most engines and trains throughout the 1980s. You can just about see it on the Class 47, particularly as it runs along this side here. Talking about the orange stripe just where the roof starts. It also features on the 37. There's one on the 50. The 33's got one. That 47's got one. So I figured I might as well add it onto this 31. Not all of them did receive it, but I thought it'd be a nice little detailing project just to make mine a little bit different from the standard Hornby model. I used weathering powders this time to improve the detail, and matte varnish. So you can see we've got loads of exhaust grime and dirt around there, particularly around this area where these vents are because they're close to the exhaust. I also weathered the bogies. You just pull it out a second, give you a better idea. Bogies have all been dusted up and weathered, and as you can see, you can no longer see the shiny silver wheels. They've all been painted and weathered up. Did a little bit of work on the ends, but not too much, just covered up where there are a couple of paint smudges and stuff. And I also added all the accessories to the front of the locomotive and the other end as well. The only thing I didn't add on was the dummy coupling, because that does get in the way of the KD. But the rest of accessories, surprisingly, are quite good, and they stay clear of the KD, so I can still have couplings on both ends of this loco and the full detail. So that's the 31 basically. That looks a bit more respectable now, nice and grimy. Let's move around. Here we got the main lines along with the branch lines. They come around this long sweeping corner. Tried to make this corner as smooth and as long as possible, because obviously you don't see very many tight turns out there on the real railway. So the corner's fairly smooth. In a perfect world, I would like it to be a little bit less curvy, but that's the problem is with building model railways in a house. You're always going to have to make a corner somewhere. I also added a river under here, as you can see. This will later have a river kit added to it to make it look like it's got real water in it. And I will come to work on this area. This is going to be an industrial area. I'm hoping to have some industrial units, car park, security fence, lighting, the usual kind of stuff. Probably some warehouses as well, the usual stuff. And as we move along here, we've got the this is the main scenic area of the layout at the moment. Just where the river comes along that side, we got hotel, a little street light outside, various cars, little car park I added in a while ago. This road's made of polyfiller, The polyfiller road has been in for probably over a year now, and it suffered a very harsh winter and a hot summer as well last year. And as you can see, it's coped very well, and it looks just as good as the day I made it. So that's quite useful. I'll be adding lots of static grass to this area and make it look really wild and meadow-like. The static grass is on order from Scenic Express at the moment, and that may take a few weeks to arrive, so there won't be much activity in terms of scenic items on this area until that grass turns up. Also going to be doing a little bit of stuff to this cutting along the back as well. We'll be adding more bushes and maybe a couple of trees somewhere. There's not many trees along this bit at the moment. Moving to the end, we've got the tunnel. This is the oldest part of the layout. This was the first thing I ever built. This is made from MDF that's cut into the shape of a tunnel and glued together, and I've then added plasticard over the top of that and scribed in stonework and stuff that you can see if I zoom in. Came out pretty good. We've got various trees and stuff and bits of rock and stuff there. As you can see, I've tried to model the branch line going off in a different direction. So you've got the two main lines here and the branch. So in real life that would go somewhere different rather than coming back to the helix. So I don't know where it would go, but go off to some other town or somewhere. Not really sure. Yeah, back scene's all holding up pretty good. It's not too bad. The area behind has also been cleared as well, so there's now an area to walk behind this part of the layout, and you can get a different view. That looks really good. I'll go over there in a minute. It's the first helix, the oldest helix of the two. It's made from, I can't remember how thick it is. I think it's about 6 or 9 millimeter MDF, and that's all held up with threaded rod that is infinitely adjustable, allowing me to get the perfect gradient for the track. These helixes both work incredibly well now and are all pretty much sorted and finished. I've added in strengthening beams, which some of you may have seen in one of my updates. This just stops a bit of sagging and sorts things out. And you can see the track goes underneath there, around for another time, and then it comes down onto the bottom boards. And this is an area you haven't really seen too much of, partly because it's difficult to film and it's so dark. So I'll try and give you an idea of what's behind there. If I go around the back of the board, I might be able to have a better look with the camera. So well, here we are at the back of the layout. So you can see the helix is 2 levels. We come right down. Got the passenger train going off in that direction. And then here's the bottom board where it comes on. You can sort of see what's going on. If I move right in, I can't see at all now. There's that little twist in the track as it works its way up to the top. Don't know how well you could see that, but hopefully you saw something. Another multiple unit coming down, going round. So that track passes all the way up here, all hidden. That's where my screwdriver went. Goes around the corner over there. You can see you've got the underneath of the bridge here. I've sealed up where it's joined and stuff with polyfiller. That will hopefully stop any of the scenic river stuff leaking out when I eventually fill it up. And the track simply runs across the back, goes all the way down there. See the maze of wires for the point motors. And we reach the end of that straight section I just showed you. Got a corner which is underneath the town scene, and that comes right round onto the second helix over here. This helix is just as reliable as the first one. This also works really well. Don't really have any problems with any trains anymore on here. Most of the new stock I buy and everything all works. This has also been strengthened with various beams to stop it sagging. I noticed after a couple of months of the helixes being assembled, they sagged in a few places. This didn't necessarily affect the way the trains ran. It just looked a little bit silly and caused a little bit of coupling trouble in some places. So I thought I'd remedy that by adding those beams in, and they just keep everything nice and in position. So I'll try and get over to the back over there and give you another shot of the underground section. There you go, we're now under the second TMD, and you can see trains come around and then go on to that helix. And you can see the whole back section that goes along. Comes the 105, 56 going the other way. And we go up onto the helix. So now we've come to the top of the helix. As you can see, there's plenty of stuff coming up, and this is the main TMD as such. This is where most of the engines are stored. You can see we've got haven't really got too much in the shed at the moment. We've got a Deltic hiding in there. A couple of departmental ballast wagons that I recently repainted and weathered, which see a bit of service. Class 58's taking a well-earned break in the holding siding, and we've got my rail freight wagons over there. Got fuel pipes as well, which I added a couple of months ago. They've come out really well. They're just wooden dowel to represent a pipe, and a few bits of metal and solder and plastic parts to make the fuel pipes and stuff. Looks really good. Nice little refueling point. I'll probably be adding some tanks and stuff over here where the CMX wagon is. Probably some tanks or something there. You can see also there's a pencil line and a black line. This represents where the town scene will eventually end. So there will be a town scene will sort of start here where this point is. Sort of, still got to tell because I'm sort of bent over at the moment. It'll start there and it'll work its way all the way across. So this will be all covered up. There'll be a bridge as if it's disappearing underneath the town, which you see in many places, like a London Underground cutting or something, where it appears momentarily and then disappears back under the streets. It'll be a bit like that. The town scene needs to be expanded at the moment, because you can see it's not quite big enough. So this road will curve round and then come along to this side. There might be a little T-junction that goes across up there. I'm not entirely sure yet. I'm going to have a mess around with some ideas. I need to get some more materials and stuff and start building the area up. But aside from the static grass, the town scene will be the next area to sort of be majorly built up and worked on. And that will make the station look a little bit more impressive. And the station eventually worked on as well. There's plenty to do, long way to go, but all in good time. Now you probably noticed the road on the town scene doesn't look in too good shape. Now this road was made of polyfiller, and what's happened is in the cold weather it's all cracked up and it's sort of disintegrated. Now that's not the fault of the polyfiller, it partly is. Basically the polyfiller had gone off when I used it, and it had gone off in such a way that when it's mixed up and wet, it was just like normal polyfiller. Once it dried, it simply formed back into the powder that the polyfiller was originally made of. So there's actually nothing held together, it just comes off on your fingers. That's what happens when polyfiller goes bad. Now, as you can see, it's all cracked up and moved about, and that's because the cold and hot weather has been distorting it, and because it wasn't really very well sound anyway, it just sort of disintegrated. As you saw earlier, the other road made from polyfiller has been up for almost the same length of time, and that suffered no problems at all, and that's because the polyfiller I used over there was good stuff and it actually dried properly. But not to worry, because this area will be completely redeveloped anyway. It was, you know, the town bit with the houses, that will still remain. I'm very happy with that. It will just be the road that's redone. I'll dig that out and redo it, and it'll also allow me to get a better join onto the new piece of wood I'll have in here that goes across. So another job yet for me to do. I think that's pretty much everything really. It's a full tour of the layout. I don't think I missed anything out.